Personality cults will be the end of Sanatana Dharma. Hindus of all the people and Sanatanis of all the people do not have the option of being hopeless given the kind of problems we have. Out of the three judges, one of them was a Christian, the predecessor bench. A Christian clearly said this issue should not be before the Supreme Court under any circumstances, and he was a Christian from Kerala, saying how is a petition being filed with respect to such an important matter before the Supreme Court? If devotees have rights, doesn't the deity himself have rights? I've learned the best of lessons from the left, not from the right. When it comes to representing our causes shamelessly, I have learned it from them. Does the person who has filed this petition seeking entry into this temple profess faith in the deity in the first place? Do you have faith in order for you to say that I have a right of entry? Because this is not a cinema hall, this is not a park. From 1954 onwards, the Supreme Court has been following a certain doctrine called the Essential Religious Practices Doctrine, wherein the Supreme Court will apparently decide which practice of which temple is essential for which temple. People who are not trained in the subject, that is the confidence with which the other side operates, which says, we will build the disputed structure once again. That is what they keep saying when we come to power. So I was actually racking my brains as to what am I supposed to speak on, especially on Sri Ram Navami, because a lot of things have been going on, and I'm sure people have been following the recent unsavory developments in the state of Tamil Nadu, the kind of dialogues and the kind of statements that have been issued with respect to Sanatana Dharma. I'll start with a small but pertinent clarification, and then I'll proceed to what I have to share. With no disrespect to people who are activists or who operate in the mold of activists, I must say that I am not an activist and I will never be one. I am not a social activist under any circumstances. I am a mercenary, ruthless, commercial litigator, and I will die one. Over the last 1.5 to 2 years, I have taken a serious backseat in delivering public lectures or in being part of public engagements for multiple reasons. So if I have to reach out to the youngsters of my generation and the next generation, I have to present a model which strikes a balance between dharma and artha at the same time. Personality cults will be the end of Sanatana Dharma if we do not focus on the message that is being presented and act on it. Take it from me when I say this. The battleground is not the people in their 30s or 40s, the battleground is the next generation. And that's the crucial battleground that all of us are fighting for, because that headspace is the one that is most muddled and confused and brainwashed, with absolutely no access to resources which they can trust. And while they may be your children, the reality of their lives is peer pressure. The reality of their lives is acceptance in their circles. So when people ask me, why do you feel the need to speak in English if your fundamental message is that of decolonization? Because I'm trying to hope to bring them from pasta to idli. So when people ask me, why do you feel the need to speak in English if your fundamental message is that of decolonization? Because I'm trying to hope to bring them from pasta to idli through English and gradually pull them in this particular direction, so that I say, you've heard me, now hear Dushyant Sridhar. I'll draw from some of the things that he's presented, because the advantage of going second after someone like him is that he presents a wealth of, let's say, foundation materials which I can use as building blocks for my talk. I'll touch a slightly sensitive topic, and I'm assuming because this happens to be an adult audience, you've come here with the assumed risk of being offended. One of the best points that Sridhar made, how would you prefer to be addressed, Dushyant or Sridhar? Okay, I'll say the Sridhar, is respect for different paths. I fundamentally come from a family that subscribes to Kanchi Matha. And in my generation, I haven't seen too many people who follow the rules of that particular math in any way, whether it comes to Nitya Karma or anything else for that matter. And everybody has excuses to offer. Now, these people, where the apple has fallen far away from the tree, will find it very difficult to swallow the rigorous anushtanam of traditional mathas. They're not ready for it. Because what has happened over generations is the loss of ability to observe Anushtanam. That is the single biggest loss. So if you try to take them back to the core in its unalloyed version, they are not ready for it. They will either rebel, or they will be indifferent, or they will give up, saying this is an ideal which I can't subscribe to. I will not be able to live it on a daily basis. So such people end up getting attracted to certain anglicized, let's say, seekers or anglicized, I won't use the word godmen, but let's say anglicized gurus or acharyas for that matter, which gives them a fairly relatable starting point. After a point, you cannot pull them in this particular direction through force. You will have to leave it to Niyati and destiny in the hope that if it is written, they will find their path from that person to the core ultimately. The reason why I've come to this conclusion is the magnitude of the problem is such that if we try to tackle the problem on our own, we will be disheartened, and whatever little we can do, we won't be able to do even that, because we'll ask ourselves, what is the point? I don't seem to be able to make a dent. The problem is such, it is so multifaceted, it's across sectors. You will lose hope, and hope is the only thing that sustains us, and I've said this often. Hindus of all the people and Sanatanis of all the people do not have the option of being hopeless given the kind of problems we have. So, I would request all paramparaik and traditional platforms to understand that non-parampara platforms have a certain utility and functionality at this particular point in time. And if they have happened, they must have happened because universe has a certain plan in mind. And when the audience is right, or let's say when the audience is ready for the message to be consumed in its most unalloyed form, that too will happen. That too will happen. Because the best thing about Sanatana Dharma is that as much as it believes in Swadharma and Karma, it also believes that sometimes the universe produces a certain tectonic effect, a certain organic effect, which will upset or multiply all your plans in ways that you never thought possible. How many people have heard of my experience in handling the Sabarimala case previously? Okay. Have you heard of how it actually came to happen? I'll narrate that story and I'll give you a simple example, because I'll use that incident as an example of my own journey so that you know how far I have come in my own learning and how little I know even today. And second, what are the challenges of presenting our story before a so-called secular forum such as the constitutional body such as the Supreme Court. So I'll try and connect both aspects. 2016 is when I went independent as a litigator after 8 years of practice in a law firm. My fundamental areas of practice have been constitutional law, but more than that, commercial areas such as intellectual property and competition law. I was 30 when I went independent in 2016. In my right senses, if I had been someone who was representing the cause of Sabarimala, I wouldn't have engaged a Sai Deepak to argue the matter before the Supreme Court, before a constitution bench. I wouldn't have done that for two reasons. One, the Supreme Court is an extremely impatient forum because it does not have the time. Matters are thrown out like this. And when people ask, why do you need face value? Because face value gets you the time to make your point. There's a decent chance I may make the point better than someone else. But since I am not a familiar face, the forum has no patience to listen to me. And therefore, you need senior counsels to make the point. So what we do is that we make a senior counsel of stand up to start making the broad points, and then we start firing arrows from behind. So he'll be the first counsel, he'll be the Periya Vadyar, and we'll be the Kutti Vadyar. Our Engala Nadula Udara, Nanga Swaha Swaha Nadula Solinderpo. In the hope that if he forgets a point, then we chip in. 3, it's such a sensitive matter involving an institution of such great importance. If I succeed, people will say, Chinnapai Nalla Panta. But if I fail, people will ask, who is that idiot who trusted a youngster to deliver the job or deliver the goods? So it was not easy. 4, in such matters, trust me when I say this, the Supreme Court is a fish market, because you'll have a bevy and a host and a slew of counsels shouting over each other trying to make the point. It's not an easy forum to operate in. So a forum which is already struggling to give space to established senior councils has no reason to give space to a 30-year-old who is still a non-entity as far as that forum is concerned. I may have been an expert when it comes to my areas, but I'm still not an expert for the Supreme Court to take me seriously at the age of 30 in 2016 and 18. Now here is where, whether you call it coincidence, chance, destiny, providence, whichever way you see it, this is how it plays itself out. So this organization called People for Dharma was looking for people who could represent them free of charge. They didn't have the money. Pro bono is what we call it. That's the respectable Latin name that you give for someone who doesn't have practice. So they were looking for someone who could represent them. An anonymous person on Twitter, and trust me when I say this, I swear on Sri Rama, it was not me. Some other person recommended my name, saying if you want someone to fight this battle free of charge and do it passionately, go to Sai Deepak. And I had no clue who this gentleman was. I met him much later. I didn't even know it was a man or a woman. And that told me that in my profession, there is always someone watching what you do. And in general, I think in life, that's the lesson. Whether you think someone's watching you or not, there is always someone who's watching your actions. So this happens in 2016. We go before the Supreme Court. It was then before only 3 judges. It hadn't traveled to 5 judges directly. It was before 3 judges. Out of the 3 judges, one of them was a Christian, the predecessor bench. A Christian clearly said, this issue should not be before the Supreme Court under any circumstances. And he was a Christian from Kerala, saying, how is a petition being filed with respect to such an important matter before the Supreme Court? The clarity with which a Kerala Christian objected to the petition being filed with respect to Sabarimala, even Hindus did not have it. This is what happened. I'm trying to point to the fact, as Dushyant pointed out, that the problem is less outside and more within. So when this happened, we got a small window of 4 to 5 minutes to basically explain why this institution had to be protected and there was no need for judicial interference, so on and so forth. Then that matter goes to a 5-judge bench. Now, when the matter travels from the 3-judge bench to the 5-judge bench, by that time 2 years have passed. I was 30, I became 32. And on a daily basis, the 5-judge bench was taking up multiple matters, and weekly we were being asked to finish hearings. So the arguments on decriminalization of homosexuality, section 377, happened just before us. And after us happened the arguments on decriminalization of adultery. Imagine what a situation to be in. Sabarimala is caught between 377 and adultery. That is the sequence in which the hearings happened. And we are wondering, okay, what is the mentality of the bench going to be? So when matters of this nature come up before the Supreme Court, people like me have only 2 options. Sit before the Supreme Court on a daily basis to watch their body language, to see how are they treating these matters, or go and make your daily living through commercial matters. But if you do this, the court will not take you seriously, because the court will only give an opportunity to those who have shown the patience to stay there throughout the hearing to watch the matter by giving up their commercial matters. So over a period of about 10 to 15 days, I gave up all my commercial briefings and I sat before the Supreme Court just to see how is this bench going to react, what kind of questions are we supposed to expect. Because law is not a science, it is an art in that particular sense. Because there is subject matter knowledge, but the second soft aspect, which is the crucial component, is human psychology. If there are 2 people or 2 kinds of professionals who are fantastic at reading people, it's doctors and lawyers. And you'll see a different glow. One will be a positive glow, the other will be a negative glow. One is white and the other is dark. So our job was to read the bench, because the same composition almost continued through these hearings. We prepared our matters, we prepared our arguments, we had a basic script, we were absolutely ready, and we thought, okay, I think we are on top of this particular matter, let's see what needs to be done. 17th of July is when the matter starts. 2018, the matter starts before the Constitution bench of 5 judges. Every day we come back thinking, Poche, Narayana, Govinda, it's over. Because the slant of the bench is negative at the outset. Because constitutional matters are fought less in court and they are fought more in the court of public opinion. And judges don't live in igloos or in islands, they live in the society. Therefore, sometimes, unfortunately, it so happens that public opinion and daily headlines have an impact on how they think and how they perceive matters. So as much as you're expected to prepare for the matter on merits, you're also trying to prepare to address the question of optics, so that nobody thinks that he's writing a misogynistic judgment. Nobody thinks that he's writing a judgment that is anti-women or a patriarchal judgment, because nobody wants those tags these days. It's worse. Because the moment you use this tag, professionally you are excommunicated from a few circles, opportunities are lost, and you remain a person who is completely outside the pale of accepted circles, and you don't get opportunities whatsoever. So nobody wants to touch it at all. It was a hot potato. While we were doing this, I was trying to restructure the argument entirely. A non-lawyer, a member of the team, a young boy who was in his 20s by the name Tarun Daga, basically stepped up and asked this question as we were preparing and we were discussing this matter, and he was a member of the People for Dharma. Sir, why don't you argue the question of the privacy of the deity? If devotees have rights, doesn't the deity himself have rights? I was almost open to dismissing that argument, saying, what a stupid argument. How is this even possible? But fortunately, my experience in the profession told me that sometimes non-lawyers have certain ideas, and it becomes the job of the lawyer to build a legal argument around that idea. Because clients actually have fantastic ideas because they are running the business. They just don't know how to fit it legally. So it becomes the job of the lawyer to fit that particular proposition legally. So I did some research and I said, companies have fundamental rights. They are not even natural persons. In the eyes of the devotee, the deity is a natural person. He exists or she exists. Therefore, why shouldn't the deity have rights? Now, because it happens to be a team of believers, somebody did a Deva Prashnam. Someone who was actually doing Sasta Preeti ended up doing a Deva Prashnam to find out whether this is the strategy to be followed. Because the matter is so important, astrology cannot be left out of the equation. Deva Prashnam cannot be left out of the equation. You have to take every chance available, because you have to cover as many bases as possible. If you're representing his cause, there's practically nothing that you can leave to chance altogether. Deva Prashnam basically said, ask him to start with my rights of brahmacharya. Ask him to start with that. So the script that we had put together, we had to turn it on its head fully and make this the centerpiece of the argument. Now the problem is, I'm a lawyer and my legal strategy is based on Deva Prashnam. How do I do this? And I have to make sense not just to my client, which is People for Dharma, which may endorse that particular opinion, but if I end up misfiring in court, the community itself will pounce on me saying, what did this boy do in court? What is this fictitious argument and what is this argument that he presented in court? I was operating under that kind of pressure, and trust me when I say this, after the first negative verdict, the ones who said aha oho were the first ones to pounce on me. Which also tells me, never survive on the applause that you get from social media, because social media is a fickle creature. And I told myself, you will neither make me nor break me. I will do what I think is right. Your validation is secondary to me. Because at the end of the day, I have to answer this question to myself, to my own conscience, and whether I'm doing justice to my professional competence, and can I justify this decision on the anvils of professionalism. That's it. Can I justify this decision to a lawyer who is not a believer and who is a hardcore atheist? Can I make this argument to him? Because the forum is not a believer's forum. You may be a believer, the cause may be of religion, but the forum is not of a believer's forum. So you have to find a way to try and make that argument. Now it so happens that there was a host of people arguing before me, the stalwarts such as K. Parasaran, then Sri Abhishek Manu Singhvi appeared for the Travancore Devaswam board, a host of people. So 17th of July onwards, arguments start. By the time it comes to our side, on the 24th of July, we are being told by the bench, that is our side, we'll get just one more day, which is 26th of August. And after that, by 12, that is 1 o'clock on 26th of August, our right to submit will be closed. They said all of you will have to finish your arguments by this time. So on the 24th of August, I jump up suddenly because I'm a non-entity in the Supreme Court, at least at that point. Today that's no more the case, touch wood, by the grace of God, Ayyappa. I had to make sure that I throw in the handkerchief in this unreserved compartment and say this seat is mine. Because you see, this is time allocation. So I had to say, Milords, women from the other side have been heard. I happen to represent women from this side because apart from people for Dharma, I was also representing women who were supporting the temple's tradition. So I said, if you hear their side, you also have to hear the side of those people, those women who are in favor of the tradition. That makes absolute sense. Because it's not as if all women want to enter that particular temple. There are people who represent this cause. So don't make this to be a feminist cause. It may be a feminist cause, but it's certainly not the cause of women. There's a difference. So, therefore, once I said this, for some reason, the Chief Justice then, okay, I'll give you 5 minutes. I'll give you 5 minutes on the next date. Now, because it's 5 minutes, in the Supreme Court, 5 minutes is a lot. 5 minutes is literally do or die. Your case can be made in 5 minutes or it can be broken in 30 seconds. So I ended up reaching the court early on that day and I sat in the front row because in the Supreme Court hierarchy works. There is a certain jati pratha there. Seniors will get the first row, non-seniors will not get to sit there. That's how it works. So I just decided to sit there and I said, okay, I'll be shameless today. If somebody asks me to get up, I'll say I came first. So I just sat there. And before me, 3 more people had to make their arguments. Senior Advocate Mr. V. Giri, who was representing the Tantri of the Sabarimala temple. Mr. Radhakrishnan, who was representing the Pandalam royal family. Then Justice Ramamurthy, who was representing an amicus version from our side, saying that he is the friend of this side, because each side had been given a friend by the court, saying they will represent the legal position from each side. The court sits at 10:30. 10:30, 11:30, the court rises for lunch at 1 o'clock. We were supposed to finish our arguments by 1 o'clock. And I'm given only 5 minutes. 12:30, 12:45, I had my heart in my mouth. 12:55, the bench is rising. I had to get up and say, Milords, you had promised me 5 minutes. He said, okay, what's your argument? So I said, Milords, there can be no taxation without representation. That is the fundamental principle of the Boston Tea Party of American independence. If the deity can be sued, the deity has the rights to sue as well. If cases can be filed against the deity as the owner of the temple and as the owner of the property of the temple, then certainly the deity has certain rights to be asserted in law. They have asserted certain rights, these people are asserting certain rights, but nobody has asked whether the deity has rights. So this is what we call the hook line. Like the hook step in dance, this is the hook line. Basically, this is the bait. So what you do is that if you have 25 bullets to fire, you choose the best possible bullet in your arguments and you use all your, let's say, years of experience to say what argument will get the attention of the bench so that I survive that 5-minute period. That's it. So what we had done, my team and I, we had prepared our arguments in such a way: a script for 5 minutes, a script for 20 minutes, a script for half an hour, a script for 45 minutes, a script for 1 hour, a script for 2.5 hours. That was, we had different scripts for different time limits. Because you never know what you're going to get, because it's a matter of chance altogether. So once I said this, the Chief Justice confers with the Parsi judge who was present at that point, Mr. Nariman. Both of them talk to each other. Then he says, you, after lunch, 20 minutes. I said, okay. Foot in the door. Foot in the door. Kaal vechachu, avladhaan. Inimel idu vandu tharakka vendidhaan. So he said 20 minutes. So then there's a flurry of activity and my juniors are telling me the other side is running like headless chickens because they never anticipated this argument. If I'm trying to tell you that they were running like headless chickens, it is not to put down my opposition. They were brilliant counsels. I don't need to be good at the expense of calling others idiots. Okay? If I'm good, but they were equally good. And they represented their cause passionately, which is one thing that we Hindus have to learn. I've learned the best of lessons from the left, not from the right. When it comes to representing our causes shamelessly, I have learnt it from them. Because most of us come from middle class families, so vacuum thoda jaldi aa jata hai. So I said, okay, now let's work together, work on this 20-minute script. But then I told them, we will not exhaust our submissions in 20 minutes. We will make submissions such a way that the bench will be forced to ask questions, because when questions are asked, the clock stops. The moment the bench starts asking questions, that means the clock has stopped. You are taking my time, what am I supposed to do? So I said, this 20-minute we have to pry it open under any circumstances. So we started making submissions. So the court assembles at 2 o'clock post lunch, 2, 2:30, 3, 3:30, 3:45, 4, 4:15. It has gone beyond the script that I was ready for. I threw everything possible at the bench. The only thing that was left was the kitchen sink, the proverbial kitchen sink. Now, when you're doing this, since law is not just a question of knowledge, it's also a question of human psychology, you have to identify who is friendly and who is not. You have to find out who is more amenable and recipient and who is more receiving of your point of view. Find out. That is why the week spent before watching the hearings helped, because trying to find out who has what bent of mind, which way is the needle moving. Because when people run down my profession, I'm trying to tell them, you don't know what we go through. We are dealing with the most non-linear entity known to humankind, which is the human brain. You have no idea whatsoever. Because a lawyer fundamentally is capable of representing both sides. That is what he's expected to do, because you never know which side of the case will be offered to you to represent. You'll have to be ready for both. So fundamentally, most of us are Geminis, regardless of our zodiac signs. Two-faced people, Janusian idiots. Okay. And by the way, Janusian means Janus is the name of a Greek god with two faces. So we had to find our entry points. So it's like Abhimanyu trying to find the entry point into the Chakravyam to see what is the weakest possible door that you can pry open. We found out two things. Of all the people on the bench, the lady on the bench was in favor of the temple. Which is to say, sometimes men can be more feminist than women themselves. Because that tells them, no, I'm on your side, I'm on your side. God knows what their ulterior motives are. But that's what they keep saying, I'm on your side, I'm on your side. And when we started presenting the material, we said, okay, let's assume and presume that we are going to lose in this round. Because the one thing that a lawyer has to prepare is that if he is losing, start laying the time bombs for the next stage. Make sure that somebody makes a mistake one way or another, or you present an argument that is worthy of a second consideration. Ask any trial lawyer, he'll tell you, if he knows that he is losing before the trial judge, he is starting preparation for the appeal during the course of arguments itself. So what do we have to do? We have to try and present certain arguments. We knew that at least one member would listen to us, not because there was any special affection to the cause, but because first principle questions were being asked, which is, does the person who has filed this petition seeking entry into this temple profess faith in the deity in the first place? Do you have faith in order for you to say that I have a right of entry? Because this is not a cinema hall, this is not a park. In fact, even in cinema halls, you'll have to subscribe to certain rules. You can sit at home and watch television and throw popcorn on each other. Try doing this in a cinema hall. Because your right ends where the other person's nose begins. Therefore, the rights of others who were actually watching the movie along with you will also have to be respected. Similarly, it is not your right alone, but the rights of other astikas as well, who are trying to enter the particular temple, saying, we have come to this place because we subscribe to a particular tradition, a certain faith system, a certain anushtanam, that cannot be violated. So these fundamental questions were finally being asked. Fortunately, when the lady on the bench started asking these questions, we started seeing a ray of hope. When the verdict came out, the day before the verdict, I went to the Sabarimala temple, an Ayyappa temple in Delhi, because I was not sure how I was going to react for two reasons. Once my arguments were done, I was asked by the members of the bench, if you want, you can take one more day, continue to argue. I was supposed to be given only 5 minutes. I had argued for over 2.5 hours. They said, go ahead and make further arguments if you want. I said, I've said everything that I wanted to, I have nothing more to say. That was the end of it from my end. All I wanted to do was go and sit in a temple and say thank you for the opportunity, that's it. From 26th of July 2018, when I made my arguments before the court, until 28th of September 2018, when the verdict was actually pronounced by the first bench, everywhere people were constantly appreciating the arguments. I should have been happy, but I was worried. Because this jantu called social media, when it will turn around depending on the verdict, you don't know. You have no idea. And I said, I'm still making my bones in the profession as a young litigator. I don't want to be a one-movie wonder. Which is why I constantly tell people, don't constantly talk about my Sabarimala arguments, because the temple is not my professional calling card. It was a case and I will leave it at that. I don't need to constantly mention it. I'm grateful for the opportunity, but I'll never milk it for my publicity. I've stopped using that altogether in my introductions and as part of my bios. One, because you should not do it, and second, I am more than that. That's the second reason. Now, the pressure is constantly building. Multiple talks invitations are coming. People are asking me to deliver lectures on this subject and that subject. Without realizing, I am not an expert on the Vedas. I am not an expert on religion. I am not an expert on Dharma. I am good at my subject, and what I am fundamentally good at is connecting the dots between diverse subjects. If I have to present an argument in electronics, can I become as good as an electronics engineer overnight for me to present the case in court? No. I will understand the logical structure and deliver it in court. That's it. That's my job. And I have to make sure that the script that I deliver is relatable to a person who is not an expert in the same subject. How do I explain electronics to someone who is a BCom LLB? I'll have to find ways to simplify it. That's where my primary strength is. And as the day comes closer, when we know that the day of pronouncement is coming closer, I went to the court and I went to the temple and I was wondering, I don't know what's going to happen. One is, of course, the Talayelithu of the case. Second is my own Talayelithu. Because I don't know how all of this is going to backfire on me whatsoever. Next day, I'm standing in court. While the verdict is being pronounced, I realized that it's against us. I thought I'd get angry. My hope was I would get angry, disappointed. But I was actually smiling widely like a Cheshire cat. You know why? I've said this before and I'll repeat it once more for abundant consumption. Angry people are easier to unite. The attack on this institution will open the doors for greater Sanatani awareness. And ask yourself, if that hasn't happened, post the verdict of Sabarimala. And the seeds of the argument that we laid and sowed in that case, which is the rights of the deity, guess which judgment it gets upheld in later? Ram Janambhoomi. Because the rights of a deity and the eternity of a deity, the eternity of a kshetra, the importance of prana pratishtha, all the submissions that we made in the Sabarimala case came back to be upheld in the Supreme Court, which gave us hope, saying, okay, now a constitution bench has agreed with the principle of what we said. Now here's where I'll take you back in time. This is a non-linear presentation. It's like a Maniratnam movie for all practical purposes. So when I came to Delhi in 2009 after law school and I started working for a law firm, I started dividing my time for my pro bono commitments, my dharmic commitments. I was brought on board for research on the Ayodhya case, which was then pending before the Allahabad High Court. And I had made notes, and I had been given a specific topic to research on. You know what was the topic? Rights of the deity. 2009, I start writing this note on the research for rights of a deity. The Devatas give me an opportunity to make that argument in 2016 and 2018. That argument gets rejected in the first round through a 4-1 verdict. Then gets upheld in the Ram Janambhoomi case finally in 2019, I think 9th of November 2019. By the time you're done, you realize, idiot, you've just been an instrument. You're a nobody. And therefore, personality cults are useless. You're a nimittam and nothing beyond. You realize that with time over and over again. And once that happened, you realize, okay, now that this verdict has been delivered 4-1, what do? There is a mass awakening across the country. People who have not heard of Sabarimala or Ayyappa in any part of the country have started talking about it. Campuses are agog and afire with discussions on the particular subject. 55 review petitions get filed. And here's why this was so crucial. From 1954 onwards, the Supreme Court has been following a certain doctrine called the Essential Religious Practices Doctrine, wherein the Supreme Court will apparently decide which practice of which temple is essential for which temple. People who are not trained in the subject, it's almost as if not just a urologist speaking on gynecology, an ethnologist speaking on gynecology, which is even worse. One has got no MBBS degree to speak on the subject at all. I'll come back to the meta point after this. It led to 9 questions being framed by the Supreme Court, finally asking itself, are we even qualified to speak on religion? Do we have the training to ask what is the essential religious practice of a particular temple, much more than the tantri or the male santi of the temple? Who are we to speak on it? This journey is slow, excruciatingly slow and painful, but I've realized every kick at the door makes a difference. 2 lessons. Hindus have a weak heart and they're terrible at willpower collectively. They're fantastic at willpower individually. So after that verdict, everybody is doing Vidva Vilap. Yes, you must. But unite and act, which is what the left does brilliantly. Sabarimala proved that the community can rally around a cause. And that across the board they can step up and make themselves count. That happened. Second, no defeat is permanent until you accept its permanence. And this is particularly true of the legal fraternity, and that is the confidence with which the other side operates, which says, we will build the disputed structure once again. That is what they keep saying when we come to power. The confidence which the other side has with respect to what was consecrated on the 22nd of January 2024, they derive the confidence that time is a cycle, Kala Chakram. So someday or another, we will have our shot again at building the disputed structure. That is the confidence that they have. We don't have that confidence. 3. As much as you need to know the subject, or you need to have subject matter expertise in a particular area, the one thing that Hindus are terrible at, and I say this with a lot of experience, having done this job for close to 9 years now, is that we are very bad at reading the room. Our strategies in terms of PR and optics are absolutely, astoundingly, how do I put it? I have no other words to say, but low IQ. Our sense of strategy, our sense of priorities are all over the place. We are keen to celebrate every small victory instead of asking what does this lead to the next step. Whether we like it or not, time has put this pressure on every Hindu to become an advocate of the Hindu cause, to become a lawyer for the cause of Sanatana Dharma. So I agree that we must become pracharaks, but we must become extremely smart people who know how to operate these spaces. You know why? Whenever there is a sensitive issue which shows some other group in poor light, the one thing I've noticed is that the entire community goes silent altogether because nobody wants to comment on it. Nobody has this disease which is uniquely Hindu called the foot in the mouth disease. They go completely silent. Nobody wants to talk about it. Whereas we are masters at washing our dirty linen in public. And we must realize, particularly when there are people who are waiting to watch us fall and fight within among ourselves, either we know how to zip it when it's not necessary, or evolve mechanisms of internal conflict resolution as opposed to airing it in public. So one thing that Dushyant says, which I completely agree with, is respect all the paths and leave it to the devatas to decide which is good for who. If you do not have that maturity and pakkuvam, at least find a way to fight within closed doors as opposed to doing it on social media. Because what you do has a consequence for all of us. An individual's mistake can cost the community. If I had fumbled in court, it would have cost the community. Operate with that degree of responsibility and awareness. 3, I make this humble request to the platform and the organizers here. You seem to have a captive audience and a loyal audience and an Astikan audience which has faith in tradition still. So kindly take this suggestion in the right spirit. The time for speeches is over. Which is one of the reasons I have decided that either I will act in court or I will write a book so that it stands the test of time one way or another. So either I fight the battle in court or I fight the battle of scholarship through books. Otherwise, what it is going to do is that most of us seem to be behaving like soda bottles. You are kathra varaikkum gas irukum or ponadukku appuram gas pochu. None of these speeches are meant to make you feel good. They are meant to incite some action, elicit some response, a concrete response. I saw a lot of people coming out of movie theaters crying profusely after watching which movie? Chava. You should ask yourself only one question after watching that movie. How many of us are willing to go through that kind of torture before we convert? And 2, with what fortitude and willpower our ancestors withstood similar torture for us to continue being Hindus? And have we done justice to that, and do we have the very same willpower and commitment? And therefore, I'll repeat what I've said before. My arguments at least got reported in newspapers and I benefited professionally from it, and I have no problems admitting it. But what about the unnamed Diksha observing Swamis who withstood the lathi blows in Sabarimala from the police when they were trying to obstruct people from violating the sanctity of that space? So recognize them. 3, most people seem to be operating under the belief over the last 11 years, and I use 11 years for a particular reason since 2014, that electoral victories and material development and prosperity will protect Sanatana Dharma. No, it will not. Because prosperous Hindus become de-Hinduized faster than prosperous Muslims and Christians. The speed with which we give up our roots and we alienate our identity is mind-boggling. Don't hurl this jibe called rice bags as others, because rice bags are being produced by the Hindu community. 4, my own assessment when I finished writing the second book was, if the first Khilafat movement ended in 1924 and within less than 23 years we saw a partition of Bharat on religious lines in 1947, it is my genuine belief, and when I wrote the book I was connecting the past and the present and indicating the future, is that we are living in the age of Khilafat 2.0. And my assumption and my assessment previously was another 24 years. I think we are looking at less than 2 decades, 15 years at best. Wherein once more we will be faced with the very same question: that we faced barely 2 or 3 generations ago in between 1937 and 1946. Because Pakistan was not born in 1947, its birth started in the 1930s. It became a reality in 1946, that's it. So, when you look at these problems, how do you connect that with what Dushyant has said? Has he said something that is esoteric, that is ideal, that is not practical, that is not workable? If you want to know what you're fighting for, practice what he said. If you don't practice what he said, you're really fighting for nothing. Because you're fighting for the continuity of that tradition of truly Sanatana Dharma to be able to pass it on to the next generation. So you have 2 challenges. Practice your Swadharma, which is a battle within, and deal with the challenges outside. Do not run away from them. Now, a lot of people write to me asking, how do I do this, how do I do this, how do I do this? All I can say is, I am in no position to give you career counseling. It is not my job. If you were serious about a particular goal, would you not do the research to find out how do I contribute to a particular cause? லேண்டு வாங்கணும்னா டியூ டிலிஜென்ஸ் பண்ணுவோமா மாட்டோமா? பண்ணிவிடுவோம். இதுக்கு கான்ட்ரிபியூட் பண்ணோன்னா என்ன பண்ணணும்னு பார்த்துக்கோங்க. அவாவா ஸ்ட்ரென்த்துக்கு தகுந்தாப்புல, அவாவா கோர் காம்படன்ஸ் தகுந்தாப்புல, ப்ளீஸ் டூ இட். If you don't do it, unfortunately, I don't wish to be the let's say the doomsday sayer here. I don't wish to be the guy who's being a wet blanket here. The ability to even host these sabhas, where you find these spaces to congregate and talk about our issues, even that will shrink rapidly. And we are not looking at a timeline which is far out in the future. It is a fairly foreseeable timeline in the near future. Invest heavily in Hinduizing your family before you think you can become saviors of the Hindu community. It is not difficult to lead materially prosperous lives and simultaneously doing justice to your dharmic obligations. Dushyant is an example of it. And I have tried to do both for only one reason, to show that you don't need to be a jhola chap who is constantly asking for contributions, saying dharmatka paisa kudu, dharmatka paisa kudu. You don't need to do that. Perhaps the time for bhiksha is still not there, or it's still not come. We leave that to people who are truly Vedadhyayis, who are truly following the path of the Veda. Most of us are usurper Brahmins or usurper whatever we are, because we are freeloaders of the efforts of the previous generation, to put it in the language of Kanchi Mahapariva. That somebody has managed to pedal the cycle right to the summit, and from there it becomes easy because the slope is downward, and therefore we have benefited from the efforts and the Nitya Karma of several generations, which has helped our brains, which has helped the power of Vak, our memories and whatnot. And that will not last more than a generation if Nitya Karma is not revived. I have been a lapsed Brahmin for the better part of my life, and my behavior is less of a Brahmin, more of a Kshatriya. Whether it's good or bad, only the gods know. Even making these statements will invite casteist jibes at me from different places. The fall of the Hindu society since 1857 is the fall of the Dvija and nobody else. If the Dvija is revived, the faith in that is revived, you have a core corpus of people who are willing to fight for that particular identity for the rest of their lives, and they will pass on the baton to the next generation. Otherwise, I know of several people, அதை அவுத்து போட்டு ட்ரெஸ் மாதிரி அவள் வந்து தொங்க போட்டுடுவாள். ஏன்னா அவருக்கு வந்து ராத்திரி வேலை 7:30 அப்புறம் ஏதோ பண்ணணும், டப்புன்னு ஒரு பாட்டில் ஓப்பன் ஆகும், திருப்பி அது வந்து பூனல் டைமில் இல்லாட்டி அந்த what is this, during the August time when you have to Avani Avitam, that's when you suddenly revive your vows of being a Brahmin or whatever it is. I'll part with one controversial statement and I'll close it at that. The secularization and de-Sanatanization of the Hindu community started in 1835. Tittam potu start panna vela idu. Where they were absolutely clear, rob the Hindu of his Nitya Karma and you will rob him of his Hindu identity in about 3 generations. And they successfully proved it right. Because one of the first things that they did after the revolt of 1857 was to introduce employment rules which require you to cut the shikha or to not sport the vibhuti in office spaces. And you will see echoes of that in modern office spaces till date. The reason is, just as I think the Yankees is the nickname given to American soldiers and Johnnies is the name given to Brits. You know what was the name for soldiers of the British Indian Army? Pandes. Why Pandes? Because the Brahmins of Bengal and Uttar Pradesh would join heavily. They were the ones who constituted the British Indian Army, which is why when they gave those cartridges, the revolt took place with such ferocity. Before that, a little known mutiny took place in Vellore for the very same reasons. Because Christian missionaries were busy spreading pamphlets trying to convert Hindu forces or Hindu members of the British Indian Army. That is when the British man decided, I have to do 2 things. Outwardly don't touch religion, but gradually push towards secularization by putting in place certain rules which requires them to abandon Nitya Karma on a daily basis. 1857, we are in 2025. Ask yourself if that experiment has not been proven successfully. My answer is a yes. Therefore, when Mahaprabhu says, until the Brahmin goes back to the village and re-establishes the practice, there is no hope for revival of Sanatana Dharma. I stand by it, except that I would add my own 2 little contributions to it. You must find a way to revive those traditions, and at the same time you must confidently fight the modern world in a language that it understands, which is English. Do not give up English. Do not give up English under any circumstances. I know this is a counterintuitive suggestion. Until your children become comfortable receiving this very message in an Indian or an Indic language, English is my calling card. And I have absolutely no qualms making that statement. I will do so unabashedly. Because I know of hardcore communist students who have become hardcore Hindutvaite students after listening and reading to these books and lectures. And the tipping point or the turning point, I have to say this only for one reason, not for self-edification, but to tell you that change is possible. Do not give up on this generation under any circumstances. Give them the right material in the right way and say it with conviction and practice it and show it through your own conduct. They will listen. What they will not put up with is hypocrisy. That there is a huge slip between the cup and the lip that they will not tolerate. I myself am capable of saying it, so why will they not say it? So, there are 2 aspects for Hindu survival or Sanatana survival. Sanatana Dharma may survive. The question has always been whether it will survive in Bharat. Remember that. Because Sanatana Dharma, because it's Sanatana Dharma, will find a way to survive elsewhere. Russians are waiting, Germans are waiting, everybody is waiting. They'll all take it up because they understand the value better than us. Whether it will survive in the land of its origin is the biggest question. It's as good or as bad as asking, will nature survive because of climate change? Nature will always survive. Because one pralayam will come, hit reset and the job is done. The ice age will start and everything will start. So you're not trying to protect nature, you're trying to protect yourself. That is the same thing with Sanatana Dharma, because Sanatana Dharma and Prakriti cannot be separated. Therefore, the rules are more or less the same. 3, never ever outsource Sanatana interest to any political party altogether. Ever. Use them to get the job done, but don't blindly trust anyone. Until the job is done, it is not done, and we are far from getting it done. We have inherited problems of at least 200 years, if not more. And the reason why I say 200 years is, we managed to keep our way of life alive under the peril of the sword. But what ultimately we crumbled and buckled under is the power of the pen. And that investment is far more pernicious and long-lasting, which is what we are trying to counter through our limited contributions. So please make sure that you ask hard, uncomfortable questions of anyone who is in power, who claims to bat for Hindu interest. Encourage them for sure, without a doubt. Make sure that your cause is politically incentivized for their survival, so much so that they work on it because they know there's a vote bank to be catered to. But do not stop pushing the envelope. Do not let anybody operate under a savior complex until we are truly saved. So there's a very popular saying in Maharashtra. It translates to, हर घर में शिवाजी पैदा होना चाहिए, बस अपने घर में नहीं. That is more or less the problem of our position today. Because the more you celebrate a Sai Deepak or a Dushyant Sridhar, you're piling on us as opposed to giving us more support. The problems are too much for us to handle on our own. And this is not a statement of weakness, it's a statement of fact. We need more people who can join this particular yajna. We need more, what do they call it? What is this twig? Samidaya. We need more for this yajna. At the very least, what we are capable of doing is to kick the door open and keep it open for others to enter. But if there is nobody else to enter, what are we doing? 5 வருஷம் கழிச்சு திருப்பி இதே பேச்சு நான் தான் இங்கே வந்து பேசணும்னா உங்களை என்ன சொல்றதுன்னு தெரியல, என்ன என்ன சொல்றதுன்னு தெரியல. I am jobless, and what are you? You decide. Either get fresh faces or get sharper issues and use this platform to come out with hardcore resolutions which can be actioned upon, so that you follow up and ask, what have we addressed, at least locally, for the community to benefit from? Since I'm a hard-nosed litigator, I'm bringing that particular sharpness and that ruthlessness to bear on this particular question. How have we pushed the envelope? How have we made a change? If there is no impact which is tangible, all of it is nothing but bluster and guff and smoke. So when you walk out of this place, take a few sankalpams and stick to them, even if it's 1 or 2. Dushyant has given you a few from the perspective of tradition. I am trying to give you a different flavor, but a connected flavor in terms of the larger challenges at hand for the community. They are not connected, they are two sides of the same coin. Because as long as these problems fester, the way of life that Dushyant is trying to live will find it difficult to find oxygen. People like us are merely gatekeepers, hoping that this tsunami will not eat up those who are doing Bijaraksha through Vedadhyanam. We are only gatekeepers, but the actual work is being done by them. A lot of people end up asking, நம்ம குருக்கள் எதுவுமே பேச மாட்டேங்கிறாளே, அவ பேச மாட்டேங்களே. அவ பேசவும் பேசணும், வேதத்தையும் காப்பாற்றணும். நீங்க என்னப்பா பண்றது? 3 வேளை சாப்பிட்டுருக்கல? If they have to do everything, what are you doing? அவளுக்கு வந்து வேதாத்தியானம் பண்றவளுக்கு பொண்ணு கொடுக்க கூட நம்மளுக்கு வக்கு கிடையாது. They are struggling without brides. They are struggling without support for goshalas. We would prefer a California maaplai as opposed to someone in an Agraharam. And we want to come here and say, ஐயோ இப்போ எப்படி நம்ம சனாதன தர்மத்தை காப்பாற்றுறது? இதோட பெரிய ஹிப்பாக்ரசி இருக்க முடியுமா? பாடன் மீ கொஞ்சம் விக்கட்ட கவி மாதிரி பேசிதான் ஆகணும். அவளை காப்பாத்துங்கோ, வேதம் உங்களை காப்பாற்றும். They are the true civilizational destitutes because they are doing what the civilization expects of them without getting anything in return except for ridicule even from their own compatriots and co-religionists. We are civilizational amnesiacs, not destitutes, because nama marandu poyachu. So we don't have the right to do this opari whatsoever. Avadam pananam because avadam kaapatra. So kindly do not forget that those of us sitting in this audience are materially more, let's say, better off compared to those people. If I have to contribute to a cause, I will go by what the Veda says. Go Brahmana Hitaya, a straightforward suggestion, that's it. That's where the calculation ends for me. We are all Binos. Hinos are Hindus in name only, Binos are Brahmanas in name only. Whoever they are. So, I would prefer to support that core as much as possible. Because that core is constantly being ridiculed through social media, through articles, through movies, through journals, every day. Previously, I used to think twice before using the word Brahmin or uttering the word Brahmin. I have stopped being, let's say, abashed about it. I will use the word on a daily basis wherever I get an opportunity. Because that identity has been under attack alongside the Russian Revolution, because the worst form of pernicious anti-Hindu, anti-Bharat agenda that we have seen is the Dravidianist agenda, which started alongside the Russian Revolution in Bharat. And from that day on, it's been going on. And that absolute, let's say, snake pit has managed to spill over from Tamil Nadu into Andhra, into Telangana and Karnataka. It is the fastest growing cancer and virus. Much more than any other separatist movement that wields the AK-47. Ultimately, Sri Rama represents the protection, or let's say he represents the epitome of the guardian of Sanatana Dharma, because he lived by it, he swore by it, and he could wield the sword for it. While people are busy looking for management lessons in Sri Rama, the fundamental thing that he stands for is protection of Sanatana Dharma. So try not to come out with books on how Ramayana is relevant from a management perspective. All that nonsense is not needed. We don't need that. Have the guts to support tradition on the terms of tradition, in the language of tradition, without trying to dilute the message. Watch anyone from the other communities defend the worst of their practices, and they do so with such conviction that they literally get away with murder. And here we can't even defend basic practices in the language of the practices. We feel the need to constantly use secularism, liberalism and progressivism as synonyms to defend even tradition. That is the saddest part of it. That you are trying to retrofit these Protestant values into Sanatana Dharma and the Vedic age. Shame on us. Do you need the support of Protestant Christian theology to defend Sanatana Dharma? That is what is happening. We are inclusive, we are broad-minded. We fundamentally question the premise that all of us may be equal in the eyes of God, but at the Vyavaharika level there is a difference. You can't even get to make that statement with confidence. You can't even make that statement today. You have lost the ability to speak the truth in the language in which it must be spoken, which is unvarnished, straightforward bullet. Rediscover your ability to speak the truth about your religion. That is the day you will have the guts to defend it. If you can't even vocalize it, you can't defend it. Find the spine to get the lips to move in the right direction, the hands will move in the right direction. Vande Mataram, Jai Hind, Jai Shri Ram.